deficits, at the same time strengthening our economy and doing it in a way that calls for shared responsibility. I thank the chairman, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to a gentleman from California, a member of the Budget Committee, Mr. McClintock.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I thank him for his vision and courage. It has truly been an honor to serve on the committee under his leadership. Mr. Chairman, a year ago, the House passed a budget that would have put our nation back on the path to fiscal solvency and ultimately paid off the entire national debt. It would have saved Medicare and Medicaid from collapse and put them back on a solid and secure foundation. According to Standard & Poor's, it would have preserved the AAA credit rating of the United States government. That plan was killed in the Senate, which has not passed a budget in 3 years. The Senate Majority Leader complained that it threatened the Cowboy Poetry Festival in Elko, Nevada. An allied group ran a smear campaign depicting Congressman Ryan as a monster willing to throw his grandmother off a cliff. Sadly, that's what passes for reasoned discourse from today's left. The result is that today our country is another year older and more than $1 trillion deeper in debt. We've lost our AAA credit rating. We've watched our nation's debt exceed our entire economy, putting us in the same league as the worst-run European governments. Mr. Chairman, this is not a perfect budget. No budget ever is. But it will save our country from the calamity that is now destroying Greece. That should be reason enough for adopting it with a resounding and dare I hope, a bipartisan vote. A year ago, a panel of experts from left to right warned us that we were at best 5 years from a sovereign debt crisis. I wonder how many more years we've got. How many more chances will we have to set things right before events overtake us and we enter the inexorable downward spiral of bankrupt nations? Let's not find out the answer to that question. Let us act now to redeem our nation's finances and restore our nation's freedom while there's still time. That is our generation's responsibility. That is our generation's destiny. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Capter.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I thank Ranking Member Van Hollen for yielding the time and stand to say that jobs need to be America's #1 priority. The Republican budget shows once again that Republicans don't have a jobs agenda. You balance family and national budgets by creating jobs and putting people back to work. We still have over 12 million Americans looking for work, and that doesn't even include those who've fallen off benefits or are looking for work but can't find full-time employment. I said when we marked up this bill in committee, and I will say it again, this Republican budget completely ignores the President's jobs agenda. Instead, Republicans incredibly criticize Democrats for taking the steps that help save the U.S. auto industry and millions of related high-paying manufacturing jobs. Republicans oppose the payroll tax cut extension for middle-class Americans, which will help keep demand up so that businesses can hire more workers. Republicans are pushing for irresponsible cuts that economists have warned will hurt the economy and job creation, and Republicans proposed a partisan transportation bill that would bankrupt the Highway Trust Fund and destroy thousands of jobs. In committee, we couldn't even get the Republicans to support a modest Veterans Jobs Corps to create 20,000 jobs for our vets returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. I raised this situation with President Obama during one of his Ohio visits and shared with him H.R. 494, a bill I've drafted, and the President saw a need to create jobs, and his administration asked Congress to do this for our returning vets. The Republican majority has said no to our veterans as thousands and thousands of them return and remain unemployed. I ask my colleagues to reject the Republican budget, support the Democratic alternative, and put our economy first and job creation for all Americans as top priority as the first step in beginning to balance our deficit. Thank you so very much. I yield back my remaining time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to the Chairman of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, Mr. Micah, for the purposes of a colloquy.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I thank the chair of the Budget Committee, and first let me commend Chairman Ryan and the Budget Committee for bringing this resolution to the floor today. I'm pleased with the cooperative working relationship between our two committees, particularly as we seek to move a multi-year surface transportation reauthorization to the floor in the near future. As you know, H.R. 7 is the most significant transportation reform bill since the interstate highway system was created some 50 years ago. The bill will reduce the federal bureaucracy by consolidating or eliminating more than 70 programs and allow states to set their own transportation priorities, not by bureaucrats here in Washington. H.R. 7 provides the stable and predictable funding stream that is necessary for states and construction companies to take on major construction projects that span several years. The bill accomplishes more with less through significant reforms, including cutting in half the time it takes to complete major transportation infrastructure projects. H.R. 7 also establishes a blueprint for job creation, is responsibly paid for, and includes no earmarks, no tax increases, or deficit spending. As everyone here knows, our surface transportation programs expire on Saturday, and we need to pass an extension in the next few days in order to ensure that these programs will not disrupt the folks who may be furloughed and construction workers who would be sent home. I hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will act responsibly and put politics aside and join us in passing a short-term extension so we can work on a longer-term solution. Mr. Chairman, H.R. 7 meets two criteria of the deficit-neutral reserve fund outlined in this budget. First, it will maintain the solvency of the Highway Trust Fund, and second, it will not increase the deficit over the period of fiscal year 2013 through fiscal 22. The resolution before us also assumes a new potential funding stream for the trust fund in the form of oil and gas revenues and ensures that any future funding transfers will be fully offset, both of which are included in H.R. 7. I would like to confirm with the gentleman from Wisconsin that my understanding of these provisions is correct and that H.R. 7 is in compliance with the budget resolution.
The gentleman from Florida is correct in his observations that H.R. 7, as considered by the House, is in compliance with the fiscal year 2013 budget resolution before us today, and we look forward to the final long-term reauthorization bill.
I thank the chairman for his diligence and ongoing efforts to bring much-needed fiscal discipline to federal spending, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was an interesting colloquy, especially given the fact that the Senate has passed a bipartisan transportation bill, again, a bill that has very broad support. That if we took it up today in the House, we could get it passed right now, and it would be good for the economy and good for the fact that we have 17% unemployment in the construction industry. As I remarked earlier, the Republican budget that we're considering would actually cut transportation funding, spending, outlays by 46% next year. That is not good for the economy, and I hope this body will overturn that. With that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past several months, in hearing after hearing in the Budget Committee, we have heard one recurring theme from our expert witnesses. Chairman Bernanke said it, Director Elmendorf said it, Acting Director Zients said it, and Secretary Geithner reaffirmed that the draconian, reckless cuts proposed by the Republican majority and made evident in their budget proposal that we are considering on the House floor today will create an enormous headwind for our economy. Yet here we are again. Yes, here we are considering the same Republican budget plan as last year, hearing the same arguments from Chairman Ryan and the Republican leadership. As I said last week in committee, I feel like it's Groundhog Day all over again, but Bill Murray is nowhere in sight, and this is no comedy. In all seriousness, the harmful spending cuts incorporated into this budget proposal go further than simply damaging a fragile recovery. These cuts pull the rug out from under our most vulnerable, our seniors, our children, and those with serious illness. Democrats reject the idea that the way to deal with rising health care costs is to give seniors a voucher to purchase private insurance and then tell them to figure out how to keep their own costs down. Democrats believe that we cannot solve our budget challenges simply by shifting health costs and risks onto people who are least able to bear them: seniors, disabled individuals, and poor families. Last week, I offered an amendment in the Budget Committee that no one in this body should ever have to offer. My amendment would have prevented reckless and shameful Medicaid cuts to seniors in nursing homes. Like all of the other amendments offered by my Democratic colleagues, this amendment was rejected on a party line vote. This is simply unconscionable. As a member of Congress representing a large number of seniors in South Florida, I can tell you that the House Republican budget would be devastating for seniors and older Americans. This Republican path to poverty would pass like a tornado through America's nursing homes, where millions of America's seniors receive long-term and end-of-life care. 60% of Americans in nursing homes are on Medicaid, so cuts to Medicaid would have a dramatically negative impact on our seniors. The federal government made a commitment to each and every one of us that when we got older, we wouldn't need to live in poverty or force our children into poverty in order to care for us. For decades, if I can have an additional 30 seconds. Mr. Van Hollen?
Yes.
If I can have an additional 30 seconds.
The gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you. Or force our children into poverty in order to care for us. For decades, we have looked to Medicare and Medicaid with the expectation that the federal government would honor its commitment. Now, under this budget plan, Republicans are trying to back out of our commitment to seniors. We cannot go back on our promise to the greatest generation. There is a better way forward. I ask my colleagues to think about our seniors and our most vulnerable and reject the Republican budget plan. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself 2 minutes just to respond to a few of the things that have been said. First off, it's not the budget that lowers the highway funding next year by 46%. It's the current law that governs the Highway Trust Fund that does that anyway. Let's remember, Mr. Chairman, the Highway Trust Fund is going insolvent. That's under current law. So our budget simply reflects that current law, but we say let's go get new source of revenues from oil and gas exploration to go to the Highway Trust Fund, and let's have a reserve fund so that we can go out and find savings to fix this Highway Trust Fund. But since those bipartisan negotiations are just beginning to take place, since that conference is beginning to take place, we can't include in this budget. Therefore, we have the reserve fund to be held in order to accommodate that compromise once it arrives. Medicare. The growth rate of Medicare under this budget is the same one the President proposes in his budget. So for the chart my friend from Maryland used about saying this is what the Republican budget does to growing Medicare out in the future, it's the same one President Obama proposes. Here's the difference. President Obama, in his law, the one being debated over at the Supreme Court, says 15 unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats will be in charge of putting price controls and cuts to Medicare to accommodate that growth rate, versus our plan to put 50 million seniors in charge of choosing what health care plan is best for them. More for the poor, more for the sick, less for the wealthy, and it makes Medicare solvent. And here's the catch. We don't change the benefit for current seniors. This just applies to younger people, unlike the current law that the President passed, that my friend voted for. 15 bureaucrats are in charge of putting price controls on current seniors' medical care, which leads to denied care for them. So if we're talking about who's saving and strengthening Medicare, it is this budget as opposed to the status quo, which raids it, rations it, and still allows the program to go bankrupt. With that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to a gentleman from New Hampshire, a member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Ginta.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding me the time. Mr. Chairman, I rise today to add my voice to those calling for the passage of the path to prosperity. Mr. Chairman, we are in a debt crisis in this nation. We have a spending crisis in this nation. This Congress was sent here just a year ago to fix and solve these problems, and we have, for the second year in a row, offered solutions. We have offered ideas, and we will continue to work with the other side of the aisle to try to find what we all believe is a more prosperous nation. For too long, job creators in my home state of New Hampshire have paced on the sidelines. They tell me over and over that we want to expand our payrolls, we want to see stability and predictability from Washington first. But that hasn't happened. Mr. Chairman, it's not asking too much for our nation to see what good, sound fiscal policy looks like. And we ought to provide that opportunity. We ought to pass this piece of legislation. The path to prosperity gives job creators the confidence to resume doing what they do best, innovate, operate, and expand their businesses and their job opportunities for the rest of us. It does so by reducing spending $5.3 trillion over the next decade. We slowly bring the deficit of 3% of GDP as quickly as 2015, and we have a path to balance this nation's budget. We also do this by reforming our tax code. On the side of 6 tax brackets down to 2, 25 and 10%, and on the corporate side, reducing the rate from 35 to 25, going to a territorial system, allowing the opportunity for our economy to once again be thriving. The best way to sustain a lasting economic recovery is to remove the hurdles and the barriers that are holding back job creators, and this budget, Mr. Chairman, does just that. I urge my colleagues to pass the path to prosperity, and I call on the Senate to approve it as well, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple points. The bipartisan bill that came over the Senate would provide funding fully paid for, offset for 18 months. So you could avoid the big 46% cut next year that's in the Republican budget and make sure folks out there looking for jobs in the construction industry could get to work. Secondly, with respect to Medicare, you have 2 fundamentally different approaches. The approach we had in the Affordable Care Act was to say we need to modernize the Medicare system by changing incentives so we reward and incentivize the quality of care, the value of care, not the volume of care, which drove up costs. What we do not do is offload the risk of those rising health care costs onto seniors. Now, the board, the IPAB the gentleman referred to, is specifically prohibited, and I have the language right here, from including any recommendations to ration health care, raise revenue, or Medicare beneficiary premiums, whereas the Republican plan expressly works by offloading those risks and those costs onto seniors. A very different approach. And with that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Ryan.
The gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. In Akron, Ohio, Summa Healthcare is already implementing some of these accountable care organization methods, the medical home, and saving millions and millions of dollars because of the health care reform bill. And with this, and I love this idea of we can't have a board that's rationing care, of course, what it's not. What are the insurance companies doing today, Mr. Chairman? We act like we're living in a society where the insurance industry is okaying every procedure that needs to get done. They're rationing care right now. And we have 40 or 50 million Americans who can't afford health care. So we're going to throw our seniors now into the insurance market, and we're going to give them a premium support or a voucher. And our friend says, well, it's not a voucher, it's premium support to help them go out into the free market and buy insurance. But that voucher is only going to go up 3 or 4% a year, while health care costs are going to go up 5, 10, who knows, 15% a year. So that voucher every single year goes down and becomes worth less. That's the concern that we have on our side, and that's why we think the reform we put into place was a positive thing. And then the Medicaid cuts, who people in Ohio use to make sure they can get into a nursing home when they're seniors, gets a cut by 1/3. So we're cutting Medicaid by 1/3. We're basically privatizing the Medicare system into a voucher system, sending our seniors to swim with the sharks in the insurance market, hoping the insurance companies grant them coverage for what they may need. Oh, by the way, you can't really make money off of insuring senior citizens. And this is the kind of philosophy. That's why this debate about the budget is really a positive one, because I think it articulates the 2 different sides. Lastly, let me just say, this is about balance. The deep, deep cuts in the Republican budget are because they can't ask Warren Buffett to pay a little bit more in taxes. And all during the committee process this year and last year, we have our friends on the other side of the aisle who honor Ronald Reagan. Light candles, burn incense, put his picture up, ask for an additional 30 seconds.
I yield the gentleman another 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
Ronald Reagan raised taxes 11 times. Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982, Highway Revenue Act of 1982, Social Security Amendments of 1983, Railroad Retirement Revenue Act, tax increase of 1983, Deficit Reduction Act of 1984, Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1985, Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1985, Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act of 1986, Continuing Resolution in 87, and a Continuing Resolution in 88. The responsible thing to do is to ask Warren Buffett and his friends to help us make sure that these cuts aren't that deep, and Medicare and Medicaid and Pell Grants and the other investments that we need to make in this country.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to a member of the committee. Gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Rakita.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thanks, Jay. I thank the chairman. As a member of the Budget Committee, I'm pleased to have not only helped authored this budget, but to stand here in strong support of it. It's a fair budget. It's an honest budget. As a gentleman from New Hampshire said, this is the second year in a row that we are telling the truth to the American people. You know, the old adage was, never touch that third rail of politics. Never touch Medicare, never touch Medicaid, never talk about Social Security. Touch it and you will die. We are debunking that myth because that's exactly what it is. We give credit to the American people by telling them the truth. We have that respect for them. You know, 65% of our spending year over year that comes out of this House are on programs that don't work well and that are bankrupt. They won't be around for our children. And that's these programs right here. This is what drives our debt, 65% of our current spending. And you know what's unfair? It's unfair that in a few decades, these programs, as this chart shows, will take 100%, will take up all the revenue that we bring in, the taxes that we bring in as a federal government. Now, some will say, hey, wait a minute, I paid into those programs. I deserve to take out. Well, that's kind of true as well, kind of. On average, let's take Medicare, for example. On average, we pay in 30% of what we're going to take out. And that 70% difference comes from the children of tomorrow, who don't exist yet, who have no voice in this debate. It's unfair that no one speaks for them. We do. We speak for the people in the here and now, and we speak for the people of tomorrow. Immigrants didn't come to this country for wealth redistribution. They didn't come to this country to practice intergenerational theft. They want their kids, they want their grandchildren to have a better life than they did. Our budget does that, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman's absolutely right about the need to look out for future generations and the issue of the deficit. What I always find staggering is the refusal to close one single loophole, just 1 penny, for the purposes of reducing the deficit so that we can address that issue of the deficits in future generations. And with that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania. Ms. Schwartz has been a great member of the Budget Committee.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Ranking Member. The federal budget is a statement of our priorities and our values as a nation. The budget needs to be fiscally responsible and reduce the deficit, meet our obligations to our seniors and our families and our future, and make targeted investments to grow our economy. The Republican budget fails to meet all 3 challenges. It fails our nation's seniors and our middle class. It fails to ensure that we can compete from a position of strength in a global economy. And it fails to offer a balanced approach to deficit reduction. The Republican budget relies solely on spending cuts. It chooses tax reductions for millionaires at the expense of the middle class, and it chooses tax breaks for the biggest corporations over small business and new jobs. The most direct assault on our values as Americans is the Republicans' plan to dismantle Medicare as we know it. Rather than protecting the promise of Medicare for seniors now and into the future, the Republicans break that promise. Rather than reducing costs through payment and delivery system reforms, the Republicans do nothing to contain costs and simply shift the cost burden on our seniors. And rather than guaranteed benefits, the Republicans leave seniors on their own to buy what benefits they can afford with a voucher of limited value. This means seniors are subjected to the uncertainty of the insurance industry, meaning possible discrimination based on age, illness, and income. Their budget even cuts health coverage for our sickest and frailest seniors, threatening their access to vital nursing home care. For decades, Medicare has provided security, both financial and health security, for American seniors, with access to quality, affordable, guaranteed health benefits. Medicare is a promise to our seniors, and it is a promise that this Republican budget breaks. America's seniors deserve better. Instead, we need a balanced approach to reduce the deficit, to meet our commitments in our nation, particularly to our seniors, and creates an environment that grows our economy now and into the future. Reject this Republican budget and choose a Democratic budget alternative that meets our nation's challenges in a way that is balanced, fair, and responsible. And I yield.
The lady's time has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself 1 minute before I yield to the gentleman from Texas, simply to say, I keep hearing this word voucher. I'm told it polls well if your goal is to try and scare senior citizens. What we're talking about in here is to build upon the bipartisan reforms that have been advocated in the 90s, early part of this decade, and more recently, on how best to save and strengthen the Medicare guarantee. First, no changes for anybody in or near retirement from Medicare. Second, when a person 54 or below becomes Medicare eligible, they'll get a list of guaranteed coverage options from Medicare from which to choose, just like we do as members of Congress, including, in this case, the traditional Medicare program. Medicare will subsidize their premiums that they choose from the plan they choose. If you're low income or sick, you'll get much more. You'll get total coverage out of pockets for a low income person. And we say if you're a wealthy person, you can probably afford more out of pocket, so you're not going to get as much of a subsidy. And that premium grows. We competitively bid. The plans must offer the basic benefit so it protects against health inflation. And as a backstop, it grows at no faster than what the President proposes in his. Here's the difference in yielding myself 30 additional seconds, Mr. Chairman. The President's different. He allows Medicare to go bankrupt. But even that, he takes $500 billion from Medicare to spend on his new health care program for other people, and puts a board of 15 unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats in charge of denying care by denying prices. It says you can go and cut reimbursement rates to providers. You can do whatever a value-based benefit design, which is what they propose, whatever that means, to affect current seniors. We reject the idea that Medicare should be run by 15 unelected bureaucrats, and instead we want to preserve it for the current generation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield 5 minutes to the chairman of the House Republican Conference, a former member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Hensling from Texas.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman for yielding, and I especially thank him for his national leadership on this pressing issue of the national debt. Mr. Chairman, last week, Secretary Geithner came up to Capitol Hill to warn of the threat to the American economy of the European debt crisis. But, Mr. Chairman, the American people know that the greater threat to the American economy is the American debt crisis. We face the absolute worst debt crisis in America's history, and yet it has been almost 3 years since both House and Senate Democrats have submitted a budget. Almost 3 full years. Now, to his credit, the President has submitted a budget. To his shame, it adds $11 trillion to our national debt, on top of the $5 trillion that he's already imposed of additional national debt. And, Mr. Chairman, everyone knows that the spending trajectory of the federal government is unsustainable. And what does our President do in his budget? He takes an unsustainable spending trajectory and doubles down. He makes it more unsustainable, which makes it unconscionable. And perhaps worst of all, Mr. Chairman, even though he knows what the drivers of our national insolvency are, he refuses to deal with them. But don't take my word for it. Listen to the editorial pages of major U.S. newspapers, many of which are pretty liberal in their orientation. The Boston Herald writes, quote, President Barack Obama has apparently decided that he is not going to be part of the solution to the nation's enormous deficit, which would make him, yes, part of the problem. The L.A. Times, it's past time for the administration to lay out a credible plan for bringing the deficit and debt under control. Sadly, Obama's budget proposal shows that he would rather wait until after the election to have that reckoning. USA Today, the best test of a budget proposal these days is whether it reins in the national debt. The election year budget President Obama sent to Congress on Monday fails that test. You know, Mr. Chairman, it's pretty clear the President's policies have failed. They're hampering our economic recovery, and because they have failed, regrettably, our President has resorted to the politics of division and envy, which is fairly evident in his budget. He has not appealed to the better angels of our disposition, not the noblest aspirations of our fellow citizens, but instead appeals to their basest instincts. Mr. Chairman, the nation is truly at a crossroads between two very, very different paths. The President's path, one of crushing, unsustainable debt, a massive tax increase on struggling families and small business, and most troubling, a diminished future for our children and grandchildren. In short, it is the road to becoming a European-style social democracy of the 21st century. Mr. Chairman, it is past time to quit spending money we don't have. It is past time to quit borrowing almost 40 cents on the dollar, much of it from the Chinese, so we can just turn around and send the bill to our children and our grandchildren. Where the President and other Democrats have failed to lead, House Republicans, under the leadership of our Budget Chairman, Paul Ryan, have acted. We have a vastly different path for America's future. It is a path of opportunity. It is a path for economic growth. It is the path to prosperity. And it is the path of fiscal sustainability that over time not just reduces the national debt, will pay it off. Number one, let's look at the differences. Our budget would absolutely prevent the President's single largest tax increase in American history, $1.9 trillion of new taxes to be imposed upon our job creators and other hard-working Americans. And you know what's ironic, Mr. Chairman? Even if you gave the President every single job-hampering tax increase he's asked for, it's about 16, maybe 17% of the $11 trillion he wants to add to the national debt. You can't tax your way out of this problem, Mr. Chairman. And
1 minute from minute.
Recognized.
Yeah, 3 additional minutes.
1 minute.
3 additional minutes.
For 3 additional minutes.
You know, part of the problem here is, Mr. Chairman, part of the problem with this approach is sooner or later you run out of rich people. So we know it's the middle income who will end up paying this. Second point. We repealed the President's failed health care program. The one that we now understand is going to cost almost $2 trillion. One that now the Congressional Budget Office tells us will cost us almost 2 million jobs. And the one that creates the Independent Payment Advisory Board, as the chairman has said, 15 unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats who'll begin making health care decisions for our seniors, like my 79-year-old mother, my 83-year-old father. You know, if one of them needs a hip replacement, if one of them needs a heart bypass, I want that decision to be made between them and their doctor, not the 15 unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats who have one and only one purpose, and that is to impose price controls and ration the quality and access of health care to our seniors. You know, I hear the buzz line, but it seems to me that ends Medicare as we know it. Looting $500 billion out of Medicare to pay for the president's health care, that seems to end Medicare as we know it. Putting a global price cap, that seems to end Medicare as we know it. And most of all, since we've heard from the trustees of the Medicare and Social Security Trust Fund, it's going broke, allowing it to go broke, which our friends on the other side of the aisle does. Seems to me to be ending Medicare as we know it. Our budget will end the road to bankruptcy by controlling spending. Under the President's budget, spending has gone from its traditional 20% of our economy to 24%, and it's on its way to 40% over the course of the next generation. Our budget will control spending, limit government so we can have unlimited opportunity. What is this debate truly about, Mr. Chairman? Here's what I think it's about, and I've shared this correspondence with my colleagues before. I heard from the Calhoun family in Winsboro, Texas about this debt. And he wrote me, Congressman, I've never felt so embarrassed and ashamed about anything I have done in my life as I do about leaving this mess in the laps of Tyler and Caitlin, my precious grandkids. I have written both of them a heartfelt apology for them to read when they get old enough to understand what I allowed our country's governing authority to do to them. Mr. Chairman, we have no greater moral responsibility than to preserve the blessings of liberty and opportunity for this gentleman's grandchildren and the next generation. It's what we do. We are Americans. We're not just operating on borrowed money, we're operating on borrowed time. 1 minute. Two paths, two choices, one duty. Let history record, I hope history record, that we acted worthy of ourselves, that we acted worthy of our forefathers, that we acted worthy of this great republic that so many have sacrificed for over the years. No more borrowed time, no more borrowed money. Let's seize the moment in history. Let's adopt the Republican path to prosperity budget. And I yield back to balance my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The difference between the President's plan and the Republican budget, the difference between the Democratic alternative and the Republican budget, is that we take a balanced approach. I think everybody understands that spending cuts have to be part of the solution. This Congress acted last summer, cut $1 trillion out of the budget. But the President and the Democratic alternative also understands what bipartisan groups all understand, which is the only credible way to reduce our deficits is through a combination of spending cuts and cutting some of the tax breaks to special interests and asking millionaires to pay more. I keep hearing our Republican colleagues come to the floor lamenting the large deficits and debt which we all agree we need to get under control, and then refusing to cut one special interest loophole for the purpose of reducing the deficit, asking a millionaire to contribute one more penny for the purpose of reducing the deficit. Now, with respect to the issue of Medicare, the reason it's not premium support is it doesn't provide constant support to the senior on Medicare. Over time, seniors' purchasing power of this voucher will get less and less while the costs go up and up. I would point out again that members of Congress have for them a plan, this green line, where the purchasing power of their health plan stays constant even as health prices increase. But this red line here is what they would do to seniors on Medicare. Now, I've heard it said a couple times now that the President allows Medicare to go bankrupt. Mr. Chairman, here is a chart that the chairman of the Budget Committee, Mr. Ryan, presented in the Budget Committee. The black line here is the trajectory that they claim for their plan in terms of cost containment. The blue line is what they acknowledge is what the President calls for. As you can see, the tracks are very different. This red line is projected costs increased by the Congressional Budget Office. The difference between the approaches is that the Republican plan puts the risk of being wrong here on the senior, whereas the plan we put forward says we need to change the incentive structures to change the incentives in a way that providers provide more cost-efficient care rather than putting that risk on the senior. That is the fundamental difference, and AARP, the largest organization of seniors in the country, agrees with what I've just said, and they say in their letter, the premium support method described in the proposal, unlike private plan options that currently exist in Medicare, would likely, quote, price out traditional Medicare as a viable option, thus rendering the choice of traditional Medicare as a false promise. They go on to say that the purchasing power of this voucher will not keep pace with health care costs. Let's not put that risk on seniors. And with that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Florida who has been just tenacious in making sure that we deal with these issues in a fair and balanced way. Ms. Castro.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, I thank the ranking member very much. The Republican budget makes something very clear, and that's that Democrats and Republicans have very different visions for our great country. The Republican vision is harsh, and independent commentators have said a few things about their proposed budget. They've called it reverse Robin Hood, they've called it disturbing, and they've called it extreme. And I think one of the primary reasons is that the Republican budget breaks the promise that this country has made to generations of Americans, that is Medicare. The fundamental promise of Medicare is if you work hard, you play by the rules, and you pay into Medicare every year as you're working, that it will be there for you in retirement. And you can live your retirement years in dignity, even in the face of a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or cancer. You will not go bankrupt, and your children will not go bankrupt. Medicare makes America great. But unfortunately, through this budget, the Republicans say they don't share that view. Specifically, the Republican budget ends guaranteed coverage that our parents and grandparents have paid for, cuts Medicare benefits, it increases premiums and co-pays, and it scraps all of those important Democratic cost-saving reforms that strengthen Medicare. And I offered an amendment in the Budget Committee that would retain closing of the donut hole, the annual wellness visit, and other benefits, and unfortunately it was voted down. It ends Medicare as we know it and forces the average senior to pay twice as much for half the benefits. And Americans need to ask why. Why do they want to cut Medicare while at the same time protecting corporate tax subsidies and loopholes like the ones for big oil? Why do they want to cut Medicare while at the same time increasing tax breaks for millionaires? The Republican budget proposes a harsh vision indeed, a vision that is contrary to our values for American families. I yield back.
Should we tell her? Should we stop?
Three.
Gentleman from Wisconsin.
To catch up, does the gentleman from Maryland want to yield to another person to catch up on time?
You ready to go? I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey. Mr. Pasquale has been fighting for jobs as part of this budget.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
The chairman of the Budget Committee stated when it was introduced, this budget, that his reason for turning Robin Hood on his head was to stop a quote-unquote insidious moral tipping point. Well, Madam Speaker, I can only assume April Fools came early, that this budget resolution is a joke. We're going to steal from the middle class and working poor because we need to stiffen their upper lips and improve their moral fiber. Let's talk about moral fiber. Where were the morals of the bankers on Wall Street who drove this economy off a cliff? They're doing just fine today. They're not doing time. But the middle class is still struggling and millions of Americans are unemployed. You don't have to look far to see what the real intentions of this budget is. a 30-year pathway to poverty, shrink the middle class even further. Don't take my word for it. When asked if his tax plan would hurt the middle class, the chairman of the Budget Committee responded with, quote unquote, "I don't know." There's no way to know that. Are you playing Russian roulette with a shrinking middle class? Mr. Speaker, let's try to help the chairman figure this out. The $4.6 trillion tax giveaway to the very wealthy in this budget means that the middle-class homeowners lose their mortgage interest deduction and property tax deduction. Students lose the deduction for interest on student loans. Small businesses lose tax credits for buying insurance. Future seniors will have Medicare turn into a voucher program that will make them pay $6,000 more out of pocket by 2022.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized.
This Republican budget cuts $800 billion from Medicare. Premium support doesn't reduce costs. It simply shifts them to seniors without the guarantee of Medicare benefits. Seniors like Medicare. Take it from me. They like the security it provides them. And it controls costs better than any private sector plan. It costs less than any private sector plan. This is not a plan to strengthen Medicare. It's a plan to slowly drown it. And leaving no working family stone unturned, this budget takes 62%.
The gentleman's time has expired.
15 seconds.
I yield the gentleman another 10 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This budget takes 62% of its $5.3 trillion in non-defense budget cuts from programs that protect the most vulnerable in the society. Food stamps, Head Start, women, infants, children, nutrition. This is a joke. Thank you for presenting to us.
The gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Yes, Madam Chair, the hyperbole knows no bounds these days. I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Oklahoma, gentleman from the Budget Committee, Mr. Langford.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just about 2 months ago, I went with my daughter, parked in a church parking lot, and let her take the wheel. She's 15 years old, and we're in that process of her learning how to drive. I do that because I'm her dad, and I know the dangers that she's about to face. I, quite frankly, know the dangers to my neighbors around us, and their trash cans and their garage, if I don't spend time teaching her how to drive. That's my responsibility to do that because I'm the adult, and I'm to step up and take lead when it's there to avoid the danger that's coming. That is where we are right now as a nation. We can continue to pretend that this is not serious and that we can just continue to spend more money, and if we only just spent a little more, and if we only just tax a little more, we'll tax our way out of this, we'll spend our way out of this. I promise it'll get better. I know we're at $15.6 trillion in debt, but if we only got it to $18 trillion, if we only got it to $20 trillion, then our economy will finally catch up and stabilize. What the people back in my district say is the same thing that I know. The problem is bigger than that. If we were 20 years ago saying, let's tweak the tax code a little bit, let's do a couple things, we could get a simple fix. It is not like that today. Just this year, $1.3 trillion in deficit spending. This president has racked up in 3 years, 3 months, more debt than the previous administration did in 8 years. It is time to make some hard choices, but they are the right choices, and that's what I hear from people back home. They say balance the budget. It's not right to take away money from the next generation, and so we can try to just continue to stir up more programs for us. It is not right to just create a never-ending list of new options and to say if we'll just give more money to this group and to this group and to this group, it'll fix it. It's not right that we don't protect defense. We have to do that. People are frustrated that we're talking about tweaking the tax code. Just tax this person a little bit. Just do this a little bit. Just add a few more pages to it. They want us to fix the tax code, not just tweak it. And year after year, I hear people saying to me, fix Medicare. Senior adults look at me and they get it. There's a problem. They want us to fix it. They want us to stabilize it. I am amazed that last year PolitiFact and all the things that were said last year, PolitiFact said ending the Medicare as we know it was the biggest lie of the year in politics. and it looks like it's in a race to win 2012 again. We are not ending Medicare as we know it. We are protecting it for the future because it is unstable. It is going insolvent. It is time for us to repair it and protect it and put it on a path that can be sustained for the days to come. All the people in my district want is a reasonable, right plan that actually deals with the drivers of our debt, that actually deals with the tough issues and says, stop playing with us. We're adults. Let's fix this and let's get on with it. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And somebody who said, let's fix this in an adult way, a balanced way, the way other bipartisan groups have done, is Ms. McCollum from Minnesota. I yield 2 minutes.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Chair, this Republican budget is a political document. It's the House Republicans' platform for November. The GOP platform puts our economy and millions of jobs at risk. They gut protections for seniors and families in need. They abandon local communities at a time when Washington should be a partner for opportunity and economic growth. The Republican platform cuts student loans and grants for higher education by $166 billion. The Republican budget forces seniors to pay out of pocket an average of $600 additional every year for medications they need because the GOP reopens and throws seniors back into the Medicare Part D donut hole. And this budget drives Americans into an enormous GOP pothole, gutting federal transportation investments by 25%, abandoning communities and businesses that need improved infrastructure to remain competitive. This Republican budget cuts regular folks and then protects and showers benefits on the wealthiest and most privileged millionaires and billionaires. The Republican platform should really be called Millionaire's Manifesto, because it will borrow billions of dollars from communist China to guarantee every millionaire a tax cut worth nearly $400,000, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. And all of that is added to our national debt. The Republican budget gives oil companies $21 billion in taxpayer subsidies while they are gouging Americans who are working hard when they fill up their tank at the gas pump, and the oil companies continue to make record profits. The GOP budget sounds extreme. Well, it's only because it reflects the core values of the Tea Party House Republicans: protect the rich, cut off the poor, and walk away from the middle class. Democrats have a budget that prioritizes deficit reduction and invests in middle class. Democrats strengthen our American competitiveness by investing in education, basic research, modern infrastructure, and clean energy.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Investments that will create jobs, and I urge support for the Democratic proposal.
Gentleman from Wisconsin. Recognized.
Madam Chair, I yield myself 1 minute to make a statement. I'm pleased my friend from Maryland brought our chart down to the floor with his yellow background. The Medicare cap.
Just if the gentleman yield, just let the record show that in a moment of genuine bipartisanship, I gave the chairman's chart back to him for his own use.
That's right. Thank you. The cap on Medicare that is in law under the President's budget applies to current seniors. That doesn't occur for current seniors in our budget. We don't put this cap because we don't want the 15 bureaucrats putting price controls on care to current seniors. For future seniors 54 and below, Medicare grows at the same rate that the President's budget proposes it grows at. Difference is we don't want the bureaucrats rationing care. And on the purposes of taxes, I love this issue about tax fairness. The President is proposing higher tax rates and more loopholes. Here's the point I'm trying to make. Yielding myself an additional 30 seconds, I'll say this. If you look at the current code, the top 1% of taxpayers get almost all the tax shelters, all the loopholes. So here's the novel idea that we've come up with. It's a bipartisan one. Get rid of the tax shelters so you can lower everybody's tax rates. And so a person who is parking their money to an average of about $300,000 in tax shelters, for every dollar in that tax shelter is taxed at zero, we're saying get rid of the tax shelter, subject all of their money to taxation so we can lower everybody's tax rates. When 8 out of 10 businesses in America file their taxes, yielding myself an extra 30 seconds to simply say, when 8 out of 10 businesses in America file their taxes as individuals, raising these tax rates gets job creators. 65% of net new jobs come from small businesses. Half of Americans work in these kinds of small businesses, and my friends on the other side of the aisle are saying it's not enough that they pay more taxes than their foreign competitors. We need to make them pay a 45% tax rate in January. Well, I got news for you. Countries around the world are lowering their taxes on their job creators, and the President is proposing to raise it. That is a job killer. And with that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes for the gentlelady from Wyoming, the 1st Congressional District of Wyoming, Ms. Loomis.
The gentlelady is recognized. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I want to applaud House Republicans for putting this budget forward. And here's why we're trying to save Medicare. Do you see this little green line? That's our Medicare revenue. Now, do you see this huge Medicare green line? This is how much we're spending on Medicare. Now, that's just in the last year. So if you extend that forward, you can see why Medicare as it exists is going broke. So that's why I'm so proud of the House Budget Committee. What they chose to do is come up with a plan that will save Medicare in this way. If you want to keep Medicare, you can keep it. But if you want something like we members of Congress have, you can elect to have that too. Now, here's what I have as a member of Congress. When I came in as a member of Congress, I had a pre-existing condition, but the federal government couldn't turn me down because of that pre-existing condition to acquire insurance. That's the way it would be under Medicare. Further, I had a choice between about 10 plans. I chose a standard Blue Cross Blue Shield plan. I knew I could get it filled anywhere in the country, including my rural state of Wyoming. I pay 28% of my premium. The federal government, the taxpayers, pay 72% of my premium. That's basically what they're proposing. You'd have a choice among plans. And you would pay part of the premium, and the government would pay part of the premium. If you're healthy or wealthy, you'd pay more of your premium. If you're unhealthy or unwealthy, you'd pay less of your premium. Now, you could either choose that, if that was something you'd become accustomed to, or if you wanted to choose to be on Medicare, as you know it today, that would also be a choice. Seems to me, Madam Chairman, that's the great choice. I support the Republican budget.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The gentlelady who just spoke is correct that under the federal employee health benefit plan that members of Congress are on, that there is a 72% for the premium. That's exactly what that steady green line is. And as health care costs go up, the gentlelady will continue through the congressional plan to get a steady amount of support under the federal health plan that members of Congress have. Under the Republican budget plan, in fact, that support drops steadily and deeply, which is why it is not premium support. And with that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, distinguished member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Blumenauer.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak. But I'm sad that we are speaking here today on what is an artful dodge on the part of my Republican friends to provide a political document instead of a meaningful budget approach. First, as my good friend from Maryland just pointed out, they will slowly, surely, steadily shift the burden to senior citizens by freezing the amount that the federal government will give. And it's interesting that they save, they keep, they spend the money from reforming Medicare that is already ensconced in federal law now. It sets back an important opportunity to reform our tax program. Their $10 billion of tax cuts over the next 10 years will be somehow offset by closing loopholes. And they have steadily refused to identify what loopholes they can possibly close without hammering average Americans. You cannot do it.
And every independent analyst agrees that this is going to be a massive shift in tax unfairness. It's going to put a greater burden on most Americans, while it gives more assistance to those who need it the least. And as far as closing loopholes, I just spent 4 hours in the Ways and Means Committee where they provided another big tax benefit that they're going to work to try and make permanent in the future. They're trying to have it both ways without being specific. But I will tell you, the area that is greatest of disappointment to me is not just the assault on the most vulnerable. Have anybody talk to the providers in your district about the cuts to Medicare, the frail, the elderly, the poor, the most vulnerable. May I ask the gentleman for an additional minute?
Yes, the gentleman may have an additional minute.
Thank you.
Gentleman's recognized.
But look at what's happening with transportation. This is an area, until this crew came